Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Evan Singer. I'm the National Sales Manager at Vessel Packaging, and we'll be talking a little bit about cans, how to source, decorate, and fill cans. Presentation is geared really towards anyone from a beginner to anybody currently in cans and sourcing cans. I just want to thank Andrew from Craft Beer Professionals for facilitating all this and giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. So over the presentation, give a bit of an intro to Vessel, who we are, what we do, why be in cans. Why is a can a good vessel for packaging your beer, and what is the market looking like these days? Talk about different options for decorating cans, get into some of the relative costs, minimum quantities, and lead times on those decoration options, ordering processes, and just a little bit on can filling and mobile canning. So Vessel, we're a Canadian company, but we do operate across North America. We have physical facilities in Vancouver, BC, Calgary, Alberta, and Toronto, Ontario, as well as mobile canning satellites in Ottawa and Montreal. However, we send cans all across North America. We primarily work with Crown, Cork, and Seal. And we buy blank cans from them for decoration, as well as full truckload printed cans distributed to customers anywhere in Canada and the US. So printed cans in full truckload quantities, blank cans, anything from half pallets to full truckloads. And then at our facilities in Canada, we do shrink sleeve and PSL application. We offer mobile canning within Canada, not currently in the States, unfortunately. So we do offer some in-house pre-press and consultation options. So I think when Vessel started in about 2015, the market was very different, and there was a lot of convincing folks that cans were the right vessel for beer. I think the market shifted quite a bit today, so it's not as much a why should you be in cans, but how do we get you into cans? So 2019, 85% of beer sales were in cans, which is just astronomically higher than where it would have been even 3-4 years ago. And if you are doing any alternative beverages at your brewery, such as seltzers, ready to drink cocktails, hop waters, I haven't seen any new products in those hit the market in anything other than cans. Cans are a much more sustainable option than any other packaging material. Recycling for aluminum is much easier than glass, much less energy intensive process, and a much higher percentage of cans are recycled and fed back into the aluminum pool than bottles. Weight is a lot lower, so not only your freight costs, but also the environmental impact of that freight is going to be much lower than moving glass, either as raw material or into in full goods. Cans are by far and away the best package from a quality perspective for beer. The double seam on a can allows significantly less oxygen ingress over time. Oxygen is our number one enemy when it comes to packaging beer. So any bottle closure, whether it's a pry off, whether it's a twist off, is going to let in more oxygen than a can double seam over time. And cans being aluminum are 100% light proof, as opposed to even amber glass, which may block a lot of UV light, but not all of it. So there's no risk of having light struck beer come out of a can. So that's why you'll see your Heineken taste much different coming out of a can than out of those green bottles. And then from a cost perspective, cans are more economical. We've seen lots of glass shortages over the last little bit, which has really driven prices up on that front. But transportation is going to be significantly cheaper on cans. You can fit many more cans onto a truckload, and they're also much lighter to move again, both as empty and as filled goods. So your freight costs are going to be much lower. Your filling costs are going to be lower, and the package cost is going to be lower. So all in all, you can definitely see better margins on cans as a packaged good than in glass. And before I get too deep, just wanted to open up to any questions. If you have anything, happy to answer as we're going, or at the end, just throw it up in the comments. And at the end, we'll definitely open up to more questions. So cans are great, but the can market has been hit and miss over the last few years. Start of COVID really exposed some of the issues on the can market, really related more to the supply side. The can manufacturers did not keep pace with demand. They didn't anticipate the seltzer spike, packages moving from glass to can, and as a result, didn't build up the capacity that was needed. We were going to see a shortage even without COVID, as the length of time it takes to build a new can plant is pretty lengthy. But COVID especially drove up packaged goods consumption over on-premise, and as a result, really shorted the market from cans. More so from the macros, the macro breweries, the macro beverage producers like Coke. Even if their consumption goes up 5% on cans, it's more catastrophic to the market than the entire craft industry doubling. So we really saw huge shift in the demand side, which led to supply shortages. For this year and going forward, we're definitely seeing more plants being produced. We're seeing more capacity on the market. A lot of the pantry loading, the hoarding, just like toilet paper, we saw that in cans. Same as other goods. Those situations are really dropping off quite a bit. So the new plants coming on, along with some stabilization on the demand side, we're definitely seeing more availability for cans. And it really depends on the manufacturer, depends on the distributor. We're still living in a world of allocation where as a customer of Crown's, we have a contracted volume with them that they are committed to purchase or supply to us, and we're committed to purchase from them. In the past, our supply agreements have been a floor in terms of how much we were required to buy. But these days, it's not only a floor, but also a ceiling in terms of how much Crown is willing to supply us. We are seeing more flexibility when we have a need to exceed what our allocation is. But we're still in a world where we can't bank on being able to purchase more than what is contracted to us. We are working on securing as much supply as possible from Crown, from other domestic suppliers as that volume becomes available. From our end, we stock a significant volume of can in our warehouses. So for shrink sleeving, for labeling, for blank cans by the pallet, we don't foresee any issues, even if demand increases significantly. We keep about a 2-month supply of cans in any size at our warehouses. And don't expect any disruptions to be affecting that. When it comes to full truckload volumes and printed cans, forecasting is really key to make sure that volume is going to be available when you're looking for it. So get into different types of can decoration. The most common on the market, because this is what every macro producer uses and what larger craft producers will use, are direct printed cans. So these are not a digitally printed can, which there are some smaller scale offerings, but press printed cans done in line with manufacturing. I'm sure you're aware of Ball's recent move to go to a 5 truckload minimum on any printed design. That is not the case with Crown. We have asked them pointedly if they do have any plans to move in that direction, and we've been assured that they don't. So it is still a single truckload minimum on a printed can through Crown. The big advantage to direct printed can is it comes decorated. So there is no additional cost. There's no additional need to put a shrink sleeve or a label on it. And because the printing is done in such large quantities, it's done in line with production. There really is no additional cost to having that can printed versus what a full truckload of blank cans would look like. On a 12-ounce standard can, depending on where you are in the country, start as low as about 13 cents a can. This is up significantly from where it was, 6 months or a year or 2 years ago, when it would have been closer to 10 cents, 11 cents on a can. We did just see a pretty significant price increase from Crown for this quarter. So costs are increasing, but again, relative to a shrink sleeved or labeled can, it's still going to be a significant cost advantage. Right around 13 cents for that can. 16 ounce will be a little higher than that, and the 12-ounce sleek can will be even higher than that. The advantages of working with a distributor like Vessel as opposed to a manufacturer like Crown or Ball, really the biggest thing is the availability of cans. The manufacturers typically have allocations for larger customers, and we would be one of those. It may not be possible to order directly from a manufacturer with any certainty of supply. I believe Crown, typically will not do contracted volume under about 15 to 20 million cans a year. Ball has in the past worked with smaller breweries directly, but I think this move to 5 truckload minimum really speaks to the fact that they're not going to continue in that direction. We do buy more cans than pretty much any craft brewery would in North America, and because of that, we do have economy of scale. So even working with a distributor and having that markup through us, we can typically offer better pricing than it would be through a manufacturer direct, with them pricing just at your volume. There's also a lot of value-added service that we can provide, or any other distributor can provide, in terms of facilitating the artwork process, order processing, and providing a much higher level of customer service than the manufacturers do directly. Printed cans are the most cost-effective, but they're also the least flexible when it comes to quantities. Again, that full truckload quantity on a single SKU. Lead times are going to be significantly longer than any other type of decoration. We cannot order a can before the graphics process is fully complete. So there are 2 timelines that run in series as opposed to in parallel. The graphic setup timeline starts when final artwork is submitted to Crown. And they do take about 6 to 8 weeks to process that, starting with a review to make sure that the design is going to be printable on a can. They do what they call separations, breaking that artwork up into its component colors to generate the print plates that will be used on press, and then a color proof, typically a pilot can that's done with production inks on a small scale production press. And that process is expensive. It's about $2,500 to $3,500 to set up graphics with Crown, but that is a one-time fee where you've paid that once, and you can reorder without any additional cost. The order lead time is about 6 to 8 weeks, and that starts ticking. That can't start ticking before the graphics are fully complete, and then we have a PO to order that SKU. Printing on a can directly is a very difficult print process, and there are limitations there that you don't have with a shrink sleeve or with a pressure sensitive label. There are certain colors that don't print well directly on aluminum that would print better on a sleeve. With a sleeve, you can have a white backing that really shows the true colors. Printing on aluminum adjusts colors darker. So with lighter saturated colors, it can be difficult to achieve those directly on a printed can. There's a strict limit on the number of inks that can be printed on a can at 6 inks. That includes white and black, and that is 6 spot colors. Cans cannot be printed in 4-color process or CMYK. So there really isn't the opportunity to have an infinite number of colors like you would printing on a sleeve or a label. Because the quantities are as high as they are, but the cost is as low as it is, there is a temptation to order printed cans, even if the volumes don't necessarily make sense. There is a storage cost, obviously, to having 25 pallets of a single SKU. If you're a brewery that runs many SKUs and you're not going to run through a full truckload of a single SKU in, 6 months, 6 to 9 months, it probably would not make sense to go into a printed can. Cans do have a shelf life pre-fill. Crown recommends up to a year of dry storage in good conditions. So that is consistent humidity and temperature, no direct sun exposure. That 12 months doesn't mean that the cans are going to start failing after 12 months exactly, but there is a risk involved in having the cans stored for too long. So we definitely recommend up to 6 to 9 months is really where that cost kind of makes sense to invest in the printed can. So the next option for decoration is shrink sleeving, and this is more of a balanced option. There are going to be lower minimums than printed cans, and really infinite flexibility in terms of the minimums and the order quantities. However, the cost is going to be significantly higher. Just to compare, when we were at 13 cents for a 12-ounce printed can, at least 20 to 24 cents at fairly high quantities, could be up to high 30s into the low 40s on a shrink sleeve can, depending on the size. And again, the sleeks and 16 ounce will be much more expensive than a 12 ounce. But you can be easily looking at 2 to 2.5 times what the printed can cost would be with a shrink sleeve. It is much more scalable and flexible than printed cans when it comes to quantities. If you have the ability to take full truckloads of cans but want mixed truckloads of different SKUs, then sleeves are definitely an option there. There are economies of scale when it comes to printing, and we can help take advantage of that by having a 6 to 12 month supply of sleeves printed, but not necessarily applying those all in one go. So by offering storage of shrink sleeves and then applying on demand, it's the best of both worlds, where you get the economy of scale with the printing side, but you don't have to make that upfront investment into taking all those cans in one go, related to the cost investment, the storage investment. So it can really be a very attractive option when those full truckloads of printed cans per SKU don't make sense. As a can purchaser, but also a shrink sleeve applicator, we can help bridge that gap between multiple vendors. So as opposed to purchasing your can from one vendor and purchasing a shrink sleeve from another vendor and having a third party apply them, we and others operate as a one-stop shop where you are buying everything all in one go, and not having to worry about working with different suppliers, having coordination taking place with different suppliers. So really not a lot of complexity when it comes there. Lead times are going to vary pretty significantly. There are different print processes for shrink sleeves. Digitally printed shrink sleeves don't require the use of print plates, and can typically be turned around very quickly, within 1 to 2 weeks, but the cost is going to be significantly higher. When we get into flexographic or flexo printed shrink sleeves, there's a longer setup time, and typically longer order lead times because they are run on a high-speed press. Requires the production of print plates. The plates get inked and then ink the sleeve substrate. And because it is a higher setup time and setup cost, but runs significantly faster, there is more of an economy of scale there. So Flexo minimums are typically 15,000 units per SKU. But again, there's an option to have those sleeves stored for a period of time and applied on demand. The artwork setup costs, even with Flexo, are going to be significantly lower. It's typically $500 to $600 on a SKU versus the $2,500 to $3,500. And that print quality and capacity for printing is much better than a printed can. You can see designs on a shrink sleeve that you could not see on a printed can when it comes to number of colors, graphics resolution, color purity. There's definitely more capability there when it comes to printing. When we're working with somebody who is looking to start in a sleeved can and move eventually to a printed can, we recommend designing to the printed can capabilities, not to the sleeved capabilities, because that transition from a sleeved can to a printed can will not be as smooth when it comes to the graphics. If you're designing for the sleeve capability and then having to dial back to the printed can constraints. So just something to keep in mind there if that is something that is a consideration for you. In terms of storage and shelf life, it's, again, more of a consideration on the sleeves themselves. Sleeves do have a shelf life because in storage, they can start to shrink. They're also stored as a flat roll. So there is a seam introduced to that sleeve, or a fold introduced to the sleeve. And that fold can be permanent if the sleeves are stored for too long. So we recommend 6 months on storage of shrink sleeves. Typically, they can be stored up to a year without really noticeable degradation, but we definitely don't encourage trying to plan for that year, because if plans change and there's sleeves left over, then that is a cost that's incurred for materials that you'll never end up using. So the last option for can decoration is a pressure-sensitive label or adhesive label. We typically see these printed digitally as opposed to printed Flexo, but Flexo printed labels is definitely an option. We see lower minimums with digital labels than we do Flexo sleeves, but again, a higher cost. It's still a scalable and flexible option. The advantage to a pressure-sensitive label, while we do offer pre-labeling, you can pretty easily apply a label post-fill. And the advantages to applying post-fill is that you can you can run off a pallet of blank cans for filling, not have to worry about changing SKUs of the cans coming in, and easily change the label post-fill. The equipment to apply a label as opposed to a shrink sleeve is much smaller, much more cost effective. So it is something you can do in your brewery a lot easier than shrink sleeve application. Just like the shrink sleeves, we do offer storage and on-demand applications. So if you are getting larger volumes of labels, then again, there is an economy of scale that can be achieved there, and the ability to only take the cans you need at one go. But the cost is going to be significantly higher, again, starting around 30 cents for the can, the application, and the label, up to low to mid 40s, depending on the can size, depending on the quantities that you're working with. Again, the best flexibility, because it can be applied pretty easily post-fill, but the highest cost option. So in terms of ordering cans, it really starts with that decision on how are you going to have those cans decorated. If you've made the decision to go into a printed can, again, taking into account those timelines versus a shrink sleeved or labeled cans, any supplier should have access to the templates that you'll need, either for the printed cans, for the shrink sleeves, for the labels that will fit those cans. But speak to whoever is printing and really get an understanding of what the artwork process is, what the timelines are, what the costs are. And then get a good understanding of what the ordering process is, right? Once you figure out the type of decoration, the next questions you have to answer is, how long is it going to take me to get these cans in hand? And what is the cost that's going to be? Working with somebody who's an all-in-one, one-stop shop, it's a lot easier to have one vendor to speak to about all of those different questions. But if you are working with a printer directly and a can supplier and an applicator, then you will need to ask them all of these questions. Working with multiple suppliers, you may run into issues with lead times not being able to be overlapped. When it comes to our process, especially for shrink sleeved cans, we can overlap some of those timelines. So we work with a very short list of approved printers, and once we get a confirmed delivery date on the sleeves, we can actually schedule in application. And not everybody is going to work like that. If they're waiting for the sleeves to get in before scheduling application, then there can be a lag there of a few weeks, depending on what that lead time is. In terms of forecasting, I mean, your sales forecast should be driving your packaging purchasing. So the more accurate that is, the more accurate your packaging forecasting will be. The better your forecasting is, the more reasonable it is to operate in a just-in-time format. If you have a good idea of what you're going to be ordering well ahead of time, it is really easy to plan to have those cans in-house close to the production date. But if your production schedule is flexible and might change frequently, then you really should have those cans in-house a lot earlier than when you plan to package. And as a result, it is really, really important to understand those lead times when it comes to orders, when it comes to how flexible the supplier is, when it comes to making changes. Our process working with our larger customers, we have some co-packers that work with us. And so there's a lot of brand complexity there, is that we will actually block off line time for them on a weekly basis and allow them to submit the SKU breakdown that they're planning on packing for that week a lot closer to the date. So providing as much flexibility as possible while still protecting the ability to make sure that they're not going to lose that line time and that we won't have any unforeseen delays. A really hot topic these days is transportation, logistics, and storage. Transportation costs have become a significantly larger portion of that landed can cost than they have been in the past. The advantage that we have working with Crown is that we have a number of plants that we can pull on. So for printed cans, they can be coming from much closer, depending on the size. Crown runs 12-ounce cans at the majority, at almost all of their can plants. 16-ounce cans are run at even fewer, and the sleek cans are run at even fewer. So depending on what your location is compared to where the cans are coming from, whether it's full truckload printed or shrink sleeve cans, that freight cost really is going to be a more significant factor these days than it has been in the past. Need to make sure that you understand what your facility requirements are when it comes to loading, unloading constraints, when it comes to the equipment you're working with, max heights for depalletizers if you're running a depalletizer. If you're not running a depalletizer, you probably don't want to be working with anything taller than a half pallet. But a full height pallet of 12-ounce cans is about 109 inches. It will not fit on smaller trailers. It needs to be delivered in a 53-foot barn door trailer to get 25 pallets on a truckload. It needs to be a plated trailer. It cannot be a insulated or reefer. So really important to work with somebody who understands how to move cans, what the appropriate trailer is going to be. Is there flexibility in terms of the pallet height for your facility? With printed cans, there is some flexibility, but with shrink sleeved and labeled cans, there's almost infinite flexibility when it comes to how high those pallets are stacked. It is hard to move cans. Cans are incredibly fragile. Pre-fill, there's no pressure inside, and because the container is not as rigid as a bottle is, it is really easy to dent cans, to damage them. And you don't want to be working with cans, even if they've been dented a little bit. Popping it back out can cause a break in the liner that's inside the can, and that won't be a good fill. Any flange damage on the cans can lead to leaks, even if the seams look good and are measuring good where you're measuring. A damage somewhere else on the flange can cause leaking in an unexpected way. Can storage is really important, making sure that you have enough storage for the cans, or if you're working with offsite storage, understanding the cost and logistics of moving those cans back and forth. Again, making sure that the height restrictions are taken into account when it comes to ordering. How many layers of cans do you want on your pallets? And that may or may not be feasible on printed cans with the flexibility there. So I'll get into a little bit of can filling. Again, mobile filling is something that we offer in Canada, but we do work with many breweries doing their own filling, working with co-packers or other mobile canners. So definitely an area that we're more than happy to speak about. And with respect to can filling, really your two options are doing it in-house or having a mobile canner. The trade-off there between in-house and a mobile canner is really that you're trading capital cost for operating cost, and it's more than just the operating cost of the fill rate that you're charged. When it comes to in-house filling, that capital cost is going to be the equipment itself. There's going to be an investment that you need to make in the space that can line is taking up. And I think most importantly, really, is that in-house expertise and training. No can line is plug and play where you turn it on and everything's going to be perfect. You really do need experience when in terms of the people who are operating that can line. When it comes to the quality that they're checking, making sure that fill levels are consistent, making sure that oxygen is as low as possible, that seams are good. When you are filling in-house, really three main options for fillers are going to be from the very smallest, a crowler style filler seamer where you're filling cans off of a draft tap or off of a jockey box, or really just a very, very small scale system designed to fill cans one at a time, and then the cans would be capped and seamed by hand. Obviously, this is the slowest option, the least investment involved, but also the highest potential for poor can quality, and really important not to be doing filling cans by hand unless these are cans that are going to be sold within a couple of days from your brewery, smaller quantities, and make sure that customers are aware that there is a shelf life on this can that's not going to be the same as a commercially filled can. Pictured here is kind of option 2, which is a semi-automated or automated gravity filler. We work with Wild Goose lines, and very happy with those. We haven't worked with their counter pressure yet, but the gravity fillers, for what they are, do a really good job when it comes to oxygen exclusion, when it comes to fill height consistency or fill volume consistency, and seams. With these fillers, there's a little more labor and equipment involved, but you are putting out cans significantly faster than you would on a single seamer. Anything from 10 cans a minute on the Gosling tabletop fillers up to 50 cans a minute on a full 5-head, 6-head Evolution line. But typically the inline fillers will max out around that 50 cans a minute, unless they're a dual lane, dual seamer, in which case you can double that to about 100 cans per minute. The best filling option, if you have the need for it, is going to be a high-speed counter pressure filler. These are rotary fillers that have stations that the can comes into, and the purge and the fill happen at one single fill head, and then the cans are seamed by a separate seamer, usually multiple seamer heads. The seamers are going to be the most consistent. The fill heights are going to be the most consistent. When you're working with counter pressure, the beer doesn't need to be as cold to achieve a level of carbonation, and a lot more consistency when it comes to fill heights on that. That said, the investment's going to be the highest. The maintenance costs are going to be the highest, but it really depends on if you can justify that investment. When it comes to mobile canning, it really is a trade-off of capital investment of control to moving that to operating costs. So you don't need to own or maintain a can line. It is a temporary use of space as opposed to having that line live at your brewery. But you don't need to have that in-house expertise, right? The expectation is that your mobile canning service provider is going to have that expertise, is going to make that investment in operator training, in quality checks, and really be able to do that for you. So it is a loss of control. It is a loss of flexibility in the sense that you need to book canning ahead of time, book the cans ahead of time, less opportunity for day of changes when it comes to quantities or brands. But again, there is that savings of that capital cost and having that line live at your facility and having fully trained operators. To make sure you're successful working with a mobile canner, it is really important to choose a partner even more than a vendor. Understanding the experience. We've seen lots of smaller mobile canning service providers pop up, and frankly, unless they are going from a company like Vessel that has been doing it for years, or have that experience running fillers and running a business like that, it is going to be difficult. They may be a low cost option, but they're not going to be a good option when it comes to mobile canning. A good vendor will be able to provide you copies of their procedures. What are their standard procedures for day of canning? What is their training like? Can they demonstrate that the people that they're sending to your facility have been fully trained and capable of operating? Does their cost structure work for you? Right? Cost is important. It's if you're paying more for filling a can than what you can sell that can for, then there's no point in filling that can. So making sure that you can work with them on their cost structure, on the minimums, and does their availability match yours? If you don't have the ability to book well ahead of time, do they have the capacity to do runs within a week or 2 weeks of when you want to book? Quality is the most important part, I would say. What are their quality assurance, quality control procedures? What equipment do they have? We run ATP bioluminescence for verifying CIP to make sure that the beer contact surfaces are clean. We run the Hoffman's Pentair altimeters to test DO, shaken DO, CO2 in can to make sure that the pickup is as low as possible, and to troubleshoot any issues that may come with elevated oxygen. Seam inspection. We do on-site testing of seams by hand with micrometers, but we make sure to bring cans from every run back to our warehouse to put them through a CMC Kunkey vision system. That's going to be the most accurate and precise. And there's a lot of investment that comes through with this quality equipment. And not every mobile canner is going to spend as much on a altimeter, on an ATP swabber, on a vision system for inspecting seams as others, right? It can cost as much as a can line to purchase all of that quality equipment. Last but definitely not least on the quality side is what else is this mobile canner filling? If they just fill the kombucha and then they're coming to your brewery, is there a risk of those microbes coming and spoiling that batch that you're canning, or even coming into the brewery and becoming a pervasive bug in your brewery? So it really depends on what your comfort level is with working with somebody that does other microbes than standard yeast. But making sure that if they are filling other beverages, that they have good documented CIP procedures and validation procedures. To make sure that you're successful working with a mobile canner, what are their requirements? What are the utilities that they need? How much space do they need? How much access room do they need, right? If there's enough room in the packaging hall, but they can't get their can line or the cans through the door, then obviously there's going to be a pretty major problem there. Have them in for a facility walkthrough before the canning day. The easier it is for them to visualize how they're going to set up the line, the quicker it's going to be when it comes to that canning day. What are their recommendations in terms of the beer specifications? Making sure, can your tanks get as cold as they're asking for? If they can't, then there's a risk of loss. There's a risk that they may not even be able to fill that beer. Make sure that there's a good plan for the day in terms of the arrival time, the estimated departure time. When do they need your operators to help out? When do they plan on taking breaks, or do they plan on taking breaks, right? If the mobile canners don't take breaks and they just want to run through, do you have enough staff to rotate through your staff breaks? Making sure that there's a traceability component to, whether it's date coding cans, to ensuring that quality inspections are done on a regular basis on the day of, to make sure that it is as tight as possible. If there is a potential recall or inspection needed, minimizing that as much as possible is really key. And what sort of reporting are they giving you? What does the canning line report look like? How much access do you have to the information that they're gathering when it comes to those quality checks on seams, on fill levels, on oxygen measurements, and all that, so that if there is a problem on the market, you at least have some documentation from that provider. So that is it for the presentation. Hope it was useful, and would love to take some questions in the few minutes we have left. So I think we're close to time. If there are no other questions, really want to thank Andrew for having us. Craft Beer Professionals has been a great opportunity for us to help get ourselves involved in the craft beer scene throughout North America. Really valuable resource. The Facebook group has been a great opportunity to see the challenges that are on the market and help inform how we talk to our customers. So, big thank you to Andrew for having us, and look forward to the rest of the conference.